The Byzantine-Bulgarian War of 913–927 was fought between the Bulgarian Empire and the Byzantine Empire for more than a decade. Although the war was provoked by the Byzantine Emperor Alexander's decision to discontinue paying an annual tribute to Bulgaria, the military and ideological initiative was held by Simeon I of Bulgaria, who demanded to be recognized as Tsar and made it clear that he aimed to conquer not only Constantinople but the rest of the Byzantine Empire as well. In 917, the Bulgarian army dealt a crushing defeat to the Byzantines at the Battle of Achelous, resulting in Bulgaria's total military supremacy in the Balkans. The Bulgarians again defeated the Byzantines at Katasyrtai in 917, Pegae in 921 and Constantinople in 922. The Bulgarians also captured the important city of Adrianople in Thrace and seized the capital of the theme of Hellas, Thebes, deep in southern Greece. Following the disaster at Achelous, Byzantine diplomacy incited the Principality of Serbia to attack Bulgaria from the west, but this assault was easily contained. In 924, the Serbs ambushed and defeated a small Bulgarian army on its way to Serbia, provoking a major retaliatory campaign that ended with Bulgaria's annexation of Serbia at the end of that year. Simeon was aware that he needed naval support to conquer Constantinople and in 922 sent envoys to the Fatimid Caliph Ubayd Allah al-Mahdi Billah in Mahdia to negotiate the assistance of the powerful Arab navy. The Caliph agreed to send his own representatives to Bulgaria to arrange an alliance, but his envoys were captured en route by the Byzantines near the Calabrian coast. Emperor Romanos I Lake Carpanes managed to avert a Bulgarian-Arab alliance by showering the Arabs with generous gifts. By the time of his death in May 927, Simeon controlled almost all Byzantine possessions in the Balkans, but Constantinople remained out of his reach. In 927, both countries were exhausted by the huge military efforts that had taken a heavy toll on the population and economy. Simeon's successor Peter negotiated a favorable peace treaty. The Byzantines agreed to recognize him as Emperor of Bulgaria and the Bulgarian Orthodox Church as an independent patriarchate, as well as to pay an annual tribute. The peace was reinforced with a marriage between Peter and Romanos's granddaughter Irene Lake Carpane. This agreement ushered in a period of 40 years of peaceful relations between the two powers, a time of stability and prosperity for both Bulgaria and the Byzantine Empire. Prelude. Political background. In the first years after his accession to the throne in 893, Simeon I successfully defended Bulgaria's commercial interests, acquired territory between the Black Sea and the Strandra Mountains, and imposed an annual tribute on the Byzantine Empire as a result of the Byzantine-Bulgarian War of 894–896. The outcome of the war confirmed Bulgarian domination in the Balkans, but Simeon I knew that he needed to consolidate his political, cultural and ideological base in order to fulfill his ultimate goal of claiming an imperial title for himself and eventually assuming the throne in Constantinople. He implemented an ambitious construction program in Bulgaria's new capital, Preslav, so that the city would rival the splendor of the Byzantine capital. Simeon I continued the policy of his father Boris I of establishing and disseminating Bulgarian culture, turning the country into the literary and spiritual center of Slavic Europe. The Preslaven literary schools, founded under Boris I, reached their apogee during the reign of his successor. It was at this time that the Cyrillic alphabet was invented, most likely by the Bulgarian scholar Clement of Ohrid. The Magyar devastation of the country's northeastern regions during the War of 894–896 exposed the vulnerability of Bulgaria's borders to foreign intervention under the influence of Byzantine diplomacy. As soon as the peace with Byzantium had been signed, Simeon I sought to secure the Bulgarian positions in the Western Balkans. After the death of the Serb Prince Mutimir, several members of the ruling dynasty fought over the throne of the Principality of Serbia until Peter Gojniković established himself as a prince in 892. In 897, Simeon I agreed to recognize Peter and put him under his protection, resulting in a 20-year period of peace and stability to the west. However, Peter was not content with his subordinate position and sought ways to achieve independence. The internal situation of the Byzantine Empire at the beginning of the 10th century was seen by Simeon I as a sign of weakness. There was an attempt to murder Emperor Leo VI the Wise in 903 and a rebellion of the commander of the Eastern Army Andronikos Doukas in 905. The situation further deteriorated as the emperor entered into a feud with the ecumenical patriarch Nicholas Mystikos over his fourth marriage to his mistress Zoe Carbonopsina. In 907, Leo VI had the patriarch deposed. Crisis of 904. At the beginning of the 10th century, the Arabs completed the conquest of Sicily and from 902 began attacking Byzantine shipping and towns in the Aegean Sea. In 904, they sacked the empire's second largest city, Thessalonica, taking 22,000 captives and leaving the city virtually empty. Simeon I decided to exploit that opportunity, and the Bulgarian army appeared in the vicinity of the deserted city. By securing and settling Thessalonica, the Bulgarians would have gained an important port on the Aegean Sea and would have cemented the hold on the Western Balkans, creating a permanent threat to Constantinople. Aware of the danger, the Byzantines sent the experienced diplomat Leo Quasfactes to negotiate a solution. The course of the negotiations is unknown. In a surviving letter to Emperor Leo VI the Wise, Quasfactes boasted that he had convinced the Bulgarians not to take the city but did not mention more details. However, an inscription found near the village of Narash testifies that since 904 the border between the two countries ran only 20 kilometers to the north of Thessalonica. As a result of the negotiations, Bulgaria secured the territorial gains acquired in Macedonia during the reign of Khan Przemysl and expanded its territory further south, taking possession of most of the region. The western section of the Byzantine-Bulgarian border ran from the Falakro mountain through the town of Szez, which lay on the Byzantine side, then turned southwest to Narash, crossed the Vardar River at the modern village of Axiohori, ran through Mount Pegae, passed east of Edessa through the Vermio and Askio mountains, crossed the river Halikamon south of the town of Kosta, which lay in Bulgaria, ran through the Gramos mountains, then followed the river Aoos until its confluence with the river Drino, and finally turned west, reaching the Adriatic Sea at the town of Imre. Beginning of the war and Simeon I's coronation. In 912 Leo VI died and was succeeded by his brother Alexander, who set about reversing many of Leo VI's policies and reinstated Nicholas Mystikos as patriarch, as the diplomatic protocol of the time prescribed. Simeon I sent emissaries to confirm the peace in late 912 or early 913. According to the Byzantine chronicler Theophanes Continuatus, Simeon I informed him that he would honor the peace if he was to be treated with kindness and respect, as it was under Emperor Leo. However, Alexander, overwhelmed by madness and folly, ignominiously dismissed the envoys, made threats to Simeon and thought he would intimidate him. The peace was broken and Simeon decided to raise arms against the Christians. The Bulgarian ruler, who was seeking a casus belli to claim the imperial title, took the opportunity to wage war. Unlike his predecessors, Simeon I's ultimate ambition was to assume the throne of Constantinople as a Roman emperor, creating a joint Bulgarian-Roman state. The historian John Fine argues that the provocative policy of Alexander did little to influence Simeon I's decision, as he had already planned an invasion, having taken into account that on the Byzantine throne sat a man who was unpopular, inexperienced and possibly alcoholic, and whose successor, Constantine VII, was a sickly little boy, considered by many to be illegitimate. While Bulgaria was preparing for war, on the 6th of June 913 Alexander died, leaving Constantinople in chaos with an underaged emperor under the regency of Patriarch Mystikos. The first steps of the regency were to attempt to divert Simeon I's attack. Nicholas Mystikos sent a letter which, while praising the wisdom of Simeon, accused him of attacking an orphan child who had done nothing to insult him, but his efforts were in vain. Toward the end of July 913 the Bulgarian monarch launched a campaign at the head of a large army, and in August he reached Constantinople unopposed. The head of the Byzantine chancery, Theodore Daphnopates, wrote about the campaign 15 years later. There was an earthquake, felt even by those who lived beyond the Pillars of Hercules. The Bulgarians besieged the city and constructed ditches from the Golden Horn to the Golden Gate at the Marmara Sea. Since Simeon I had studied at the University of Constantinople and was aware that the city was impregnable to a land attack without maritime support, those actions were a demonstration of power, not an attempt to assault the city. Soon, the siege was lifted and Kavhan Theodore Sigritsa was sent to offer peace. Simeon I had two demands: to be crowned emperor of the Bulgarians and to betroth his daughter to Constantine VII, thus becoming father-in-law and guardian of the infant emperor. After negotiations between Theodore Sigritsa and the regency, a feast was organized in honor of Simeon I's two sons in the palace of Pegae, presided over personally by Constantine VII. Patriarch Nicholas Mystikos went to the Bulgarian camp to meet the Bulgarian ruler in the midst of his entourage. Simeon I prostrated himself before the patriarch, who instead of an imperial crown placed upon Simeon I's head his own patriarchal crown. The Byzantine chronicles, who were hostile to Simeon, had presented the ceremony as a sham, but modern historians, such as John Fine, Mark Whittower and George Ostrogorsky, argue that Simeon was too experienced to be fooled and that he was indeed crowned emperor of the Bulgarians. The sources suggest that Nicholas Mystikos also agreed to Simeon's second condition, which could have paved Simeon's route to become co-emperor and eventually emperor of the Romans. Having achieved his goal, Simeon I returned to Preslav in triumph, after he and his sons were honored with many gifts. To mark this achievement, Simeon changed his seals to read Simeon, peacemaking emperor, many years. Battle of Achelous. The agreement, concluded in August 913, proved to be short-lived. 2 months later, Constantine VII's mother, Zoe Carbonopsina, was allowed to return to Constantinople from exile. In February 914 she overthrew the regency of Nicholas Mystikos in a palace coup. She was reluctantly proclaimed empress by Mystikos, who retained his post as a patriarch. Her first order was to revoke all concessions given to the Bulgarian monarch by the regency, provoking military retaliation. In the summer of 914 the Bulgarian army invaded the themes of Thrace and Macedonia. Simultaneously, the Bulgarian troops penetrated into the regions of Dyrrhachium and Thessalonica to the west. Thrace's largest and most important city, Adrianople, was besieged and captured in September, and the local population recognized Simeon I as its ruler. However, the Byzantines promptly regained the city in exchange for a huge ransom. To deal with the Bulgarian threat for good, the Byzantines took measures to end the conflict with the Abbasid Caliphate in the east and attempted to create a wide anti-Bulgarian coalition. Two envoys were sent to Baghdad, where they secured peace with Caliph al-Muqtadir in June 917. The strategos of Dyrrhachium, Leo Rabdouchos, was instructed to negotiate with the Serbian prince Peter Gojniković, who was a Bulgarian vassal but was willing to renounce Bulgarian suzerainty. However, the court in Preslav was warned about the negotiations by Prince Michael of Zahumlia, a loyal ally of Bulgaria, and Simeon I was able to prevent an immediate Serb attack. The Byzantine attempts to approach the Magyars were also successfully countered by the Bulgarian diplomacy. The general John Bogas was sent with rich gifts to the Pechenegs, who inhabited the steppes to the northeast of Bulgaria. The Bulgarians had already established strong connections with the Pechenegs, including through marriages, and Bogas' mission proved to be a hard one. He did manage to convince some tribes to send aid, but eventually the Byzantine navy refused to transport them to the south of the Danube River, probably as a result of the jealousy that existed between Bogas and the ambitious Admiral Romanos Lekarpanos. And even now there could be seen piles of bones at Achelous, where the fleeing army of the Romans was disgracefully slain. The Byzantines were forced to fight alone, but the peace with the Arabs allowed them to amass the whole army, including the troops stationed in Asia Minor. These forces were placed under the command of the domestic of the schools Leo Phocas the Elder. Before marching to battle, the soldiers bowed to the life-giving true cross and vowed to die for one another. With his western and northern borders secure, Simeon I was also able to muster a large host. The two armies clashed on the 20th of August 917 near the Achelous River in the vicinity of Achelous. Initially, the Byzantines were successful, and the Bulgarians began an orderly retreat, but when Leo Phocas lost his horse, confusion spread among the Byzantine troops, who according to the chronicler John Skylitzes had low morale. Simeon I, who was monitoring the battlefield from the nearby heights, ordered a counterattack and personally led the Bulgarian cavalry. The Byzantine ranks broke, and in the words of Theophanes Continuatus, a bloodshed occurred that had not happened in centuries. Almost the whole Byzantine army was annihilated, and only a few, including Leo Phocas, managed to reach the port of Mesembria and flee to safety on ships. Once again, Nicholas Mystikos was summoned in an attempt to stop the Bulgarian onslaught. In a letter to Simeon I, the Patriarch insisted that the purpose of the Byzantine attack had been not to destroy Bulgaria but to force Simeon to evacuate his troops from the regions of Thessalonica and Dyrrhachium. Yet he admitted that this was not an excuse for the Byzantine invasion, and pleaded that as a good Christian Simeon should forgive his fellow Christians. The efforts of Nicholas Mystikos were in vain, and the Bulgarian army penetrated deep into Byzantine territory. Leo Phocas gathered another host, but the Byzantines were heavily defeated in the Battle of Katasyrtai just outside Constantinople in a night combat. Campaigns against the Serbs. Following the victories in 917, the way to Constantinople lay open. However, Simeon I had to deal with the Serbian prince Peter Gojniković, who had responded positively to the Byzantine proposal for an anti-Bulgarian coalition. An army was dispatched under the command of Kavhan Theodore Sigritsa and General Mame. The two persuaded Peter Gojniković to meet them, whereupon they seized him and sent him to Preslav, where he died in prison. The Bulgarians replaced Peter with Pavle Ivanović, a grandson of Prince Mutimir, who had long lived in Preslav. Thus, Serbia was turned into a puppet state until 921. In an attempt to bring Serbia under the control, in 920 the Byzantines sent Zaharia Pribyslavljević, another of Mutimir's grandsons, to challenge the rule of Pavle. Zaharia was either captured by the Bulgarians en route or by Pavle, who had him duly delivered to Simeon I. Either way, Zaharia ended up in Preslav. Despite the setback, the Byzantines persisted and eventually bribed Pavle to switch sides after lavishing much gold on him. In response, in 921 Simeon I sent a Bulgarian army headed by Zaharia. The Bulgarian intervention was successful. Pavle was easily deposed, and once again a Bulgarian candidate was placed on the Serbian throne. This did not last long because Zaharia was raised in Constantinople, where he was heavily influenced by the Byzantines. Soon, Zaharia openly declared his loyalty to the Byzantine Empire and commenced hostilities against Bulgaria. In 923 and 924 Simeon I sent a small army led by Theodore Sigrița and Mame, but they were ambushed and killed. Zaharia sent the heads to Constantinople. This action provoked a major retaliatory campaign in 924. A large Bulgarian force was dispatched, accompanied by a new candidate, Kaslav, who was born in Preslav to a Bulgarian mother. The Bulgarians ravaged the countryside and forced Zaharia to flee to the Kingdom of Croatia. This time, however, the Bulgarians had decided to change their approach to the Serbs. They summoned all Serbian Zupans to pay homage to Kaslav, then had them arrested and taken to Preslav. Serbia was annexed as a Bulgarian province, expanding the country's border to Croatia, which was at its apogee and proved to be a dangerous neighbor. The annexation was a necessary move since the Serbs had proven to be unreliable allies and Simeon I had grown wary of the inevitable pattern of war, bribery and defection. Campaigns against the Byzantines. With the Serbian threat eliminated and the bulk of the Byzantine army destroyed, in 918 Simeon I personally led a campaign in the theme of Hellas and penetrated deep to the south, reaching the Isthmus of Corinth. Though many people fled to island of Euboea and the Peloponnese Peninsula, the Bulgarians took many captives and forced the population to pay taxes to the Bulgarian state. The capital of Hellas, Thebes, was seized and its fortifications destroyed. A noteworthy episode of that campaign was described in the Manual on Warfare Strategicon by the 11th century writer Kekaumenos. After fruitlessly besieging a populous city in Hellas, Simeon employed a ruse de guerre by sending brave and resourceful men into the city to discover weaknesses in its defenses. They discovered that the gates were held high above the ground on hinges. After receiving the report, Simeon sent into the city 5 men with axes who eliminated the guards, broke the hinges, and opened the gates to the Bulgarian army. The Bulgarians moved in and took the city without bloodshed. The military setbacks triggered another change in the Byzantine government. In the spring of 919, the admiral Romanos Lekarpenes forced Zoe Carbonopsina back into a monastery and quickly rose to prominence. In April 919, his daughter Helena Lekarpane married Constantine VII, and Lekarpenos assumed the title Basiliopator. In September he was named Caesar, and in December 919 was crowned senior emperor. This new development infuriated Simeon. He considered Romanos a usurper and felt insulted that a son of an Armenian peasant had taken his own promised position. The Bulgarian emperor rebuffed offers to become related with Romanos through a dynastic marriage and refused to negotiate for peace until he stepped down. In the autumn of 920 the Bulgarian army campaigned deep into Thrace, reaching the Dardanelles and setting up camp on the shore of the Gallipoli Peninsula just across the city of Lampsacus in Asia Minor. These actions caused great concern to the Byzantine court because if successful in securing Lampsacus and Gallipoli, the Bulgarians would cut Constantinople off from the Aegean Sea. Patriarch Mystikos tried to sue for peace and proposed a meeting with Simeon in Mesembria, but to no avail. In the next year the Bulgarians marched to Katasyrtai near Constantinople, and the Byzantines retaliated with a campaign to the town of Aquikalidai, near modern Burgas. The Byzantine commander Pothos Argyris sent a detachment under Michael, son of Meroleon, to monitor the movements of the Bulgarians. Michael's troops were ambushed, and although they inflicted significant casualties on the Bulgarians, the Byzantines were defeated. Michael was wounded and had to flee to Constantinople, where he died. A large Bulgarian force led by Kavhan Theodore Sigritsa was sent south. They crossed the Strandra Mountains and ravaged the countryside around Constantinople, threatening the palaces around the Golden Horn. The Byzantines summoned a large army, including troops from the city garrison, the Imperial Guard, and sailors from the navy, commanded by Pothos Argyris and Admiral Alexios Mosla. In March 921, the opposing forces clashed in the Battle of Pegae, and the Byzantines were completely defeated. Pothos Argyris barely escaped, and Alexios Mosla drowned while attempting to board a ship. In 922, the Bulgarians captured the town of Vizia and burned the palaces of Empress Theodora near the Byzantine capital. Romanos I tried to oppose them by dispatching troops under Saktikios. Saktikios attacked the Bulgarian camp while most soldiers were scattered to gather supplies. But when the main Bulgarian forces were informed about the attack, they engaged and defeated the Byzantines, whose commander died from his wounds the following night. Attempts for a Bulgarian-Arab alliance. By 922 the Bulgarians controlled almost the whole Balkan peninsula, but Simeon I's main objective remained out of his reach. The Bulgarian monarch was aware that he needed a navy to conquer Constantinople. Simeon I decided to turn to Abdullah al-Mahdi Billah, founder and caliph of the Fatimid Caliphate. He ruled most of North Africa and posed a constant threat to the Byzantine possessions in southern Italy. Although in 914 both sides had concluded a peace treaty, since 918 the Fatimids had renewed attacks on the Italian coast. In 922, the Bulgarians clandestinely sent envoys via Cyclomia, the state of their ally Michael, to the caliph's capital Al-Mahdiya on the Tunisian coast. Simeon I suggested a joint attack on Constantinople, with the Bulgarians providing a large land army and the Arabs a navy. It was proposed that all spoils would be divided equally. The Bulgarians would keep Constantinople and the Fatimids would gain the Byzantine territories in Sicily and southern Italy. Al-Mahdi Billah accepted the proposal and sent back his own emissaries to conclude the agreement. On the way home the ship was captured by the Byzantines near the Calabrian coast, and the envoys of both countries were sent to Constantinople. When Romanos I learned about the secret negotiations, the Bulgarians were imprisoned, while the Arab envoys were allowed to return to Al-Mahdiya with rich gifts for the caliph. The Byzantines then sent their own embassy to North Africa to outbid Simeon I, and eventually the Fatimids agreed not to aid Bulgaria. Another attempt of Simeon I to ally with the Arabs was recorded by the historian al-Masudi in his book Meadows of Gold and Mines of Gems. An Arab expedition from the Abbasid Caliphate under Thamil al-Dulafi landed on the Aegean coast of Thrace, and the Bulgarians established contact with them and sent envoys in Tarsus. However, this attempt also failed to produce tangible results.